Well, thanks, Tom. Appreciate that very much. We're transitioning now to Financial Peace University, something that drives my passion as well. And so we're thrilled to have Faith Rattei from St. Peter's and Edina join us. She is a DCO, so Director of Christian Outreach, and a CSP grad. Yes. By the grace of God, it says. And some amazing ministry partners. She rebirthed a dying congregation in suburban Minnesota. She has created an outreach-focused ministry in Southwest Florida, and now is working as a missional small group minister in St. Peter's and Edina. Her passion is about turning and helping folks find the financial freedom she has found in God's biblical principles. I know that we're doing this at our church too, and I personally am real interested in how the church can feed the economic community, and so that we can grow and minister. So let's give Faith a hand to get started.
It's an excellent setup. I was going to say that he ended with talking about our master, being at the master's feet. And often we'll talk about who's our master. It's not an accident that it's called MasterCard, you know. So,
that was good.
Well, I work smarter, not harder. I get a lot of it from Dave Ramsey, but it's true. I mean, if you've had a MasterCard, you know what I'm talking about. So, we're going to watch a quick video, and then I'm going to talk a little bit.
The rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is slave to the lender. Are you really going to make the hard choices to change your life?
We had $40,000 in student loans, $17,000 in cars.
I owned a rental property.
We had a line of credit, just stuff.
We had 16 credit cards.
The proverb says, hope deferred makes the heart sick, but when desire comes.
We paid off $83,000.
Wow! When desire comes.
$144,000.
When desire comes.
$450,000 in the last 7 years.
Wow! It is the tree of life. God says this is how you get out of debt. You gotta run! There is no doubt that this process called Financial Peace University works. The only question is whether you're going to be involved. And so if you haven't signed up yet, now is the time.
So I'm going to try not to be super emotional right now, because every time I see that clip, I get a little choked up. Because did you see him running? So you got to run. I've been this baby gazelle. It's not a good feeling. I know the sheer terror of being trapped by the words of my own mouth. That's what Proverbs 6 says. It says, if you've trapped yourself in debt, you have to free yourself like a gazelle from the hand of the hunter. I also know that this gazelle has a 50% chance of outrunning the fastest land mammal on Earth. So how is that possible? Because for the cheetah, it's just lunch, right? But for the gazelle, it's her life. So it's intense. That's the meaning of gazelle intensity, is that you are following Proverbs 6, and you are literally running as fast and as hard as you can to get out of debt, completely out of debt. Now you may be thinking to yourself, completely out of debt. I mean, a little bit, sure, but no debt at all. And I understand that, but I'm curious as to why we think that way. And I believe it's because we've become a culture that's so accustomed to debt, and we've become addicted to it without even really knowing it. And if you don't believe me, let's see if you've heard of any of these phrases before. You have to take out student loans to go to college. You need credit cards because you need a credit score. Anybody heard that one? Maybe you said it. You'll always have a car payment. Renting is a waste of money. So basically, you have to go into debt for all these things. And if these were all true, you literally could not live without debt. But that sounds a lot like how an addict talks, doesn't it? I can't live without this, right? Well, hi, my name's Faith, and I'm a debtaholic. And I'd like to tell you about my rock bottom. I've got two listed here. I'm going to tell you about one. I did all the normal stuff, okay? Credit cards, student loans, car loans, medical loans, house loan. And then one day I pulled out my life insurance policy, and I realized with all that debt that I was worth more dead than alive, which is not a really fun place to be. So I needed that rock bottom just like any recovering addict would. And it motivated me to make the changes that we needed in our life. And so we took financial peace 5 years ago. And over that time, we've paid off over $270,000 in debt. Unfortunately, we still have one left. But it should be done soon, by this time next year, if not sooner. And we are never going back. And so you may say, that's great. For those of you who aren't familiar with Financial Peace University, you might say, that's wonderful, but what is it exactly? And it's simply a 9-week course that teaches you step by step how to get out of debt, build wealth, live, and give. This is a Christian resource like no one else. And you cannot skip a step. If you can see the steps over there, you cannot skip a step, just like in AA. So, it's basically AA for debt. But you came here for ideas about mission and ministry, so I want to give that to you. I'm going to let you do the reading, but I'm going to tell you Jamie's story. Jamie has a long history with our church and school, but I met her just a couple years ago. And at that time, she was living with her boyfriend. She had a toxic boss, and she was living way over her means. After coming to Financial Peace for a couple weeks, she did a budget for the first time and realized that her outgo was $1,000 over her income. And she's not alone in the world, let me tell you. And so that was a good realization for her. And then a couple months later, I received a call from her at church requesting financial assistance because her power had been cut off. And when asking her about that in preparation for today, she said with tears in her eyes that was the most difficult phone call she's ever had to make in her entire life. And it was the lowest point in her life. And it was really her rock bottom, but I'm so glad she got there too, because over the last 3 years, she's paid off over $18,000 in debt. She's gotten rid of an albatross of a home that she had around her neck. She's increased her income by finding a better boss, and she's not living with her boyfriend anymore. And so it's pretty wonderful to see that. And again, she did have that relationship with our church. But you might be wondering, what about those people who are disconnected, maybe are far from God, or just don't even know who Jesus is? What about them, right? So I'm going to tell you Anna's story. Again, I'm going to let you read about her, but I'll tell you that Anna is one of the 90% of participants in our FPU classes that is not a member of our congregation. It's the easiest outreach I've ever done, let me just tell you. Anna is very sweet. She also came to us a couple years ago, and a few classes in, she pulled me aside and she wanted to know about what my role is in this congregation. And I told her that my job is to help people get connected to what we call missional small groups, where we help people know God and make him known, and we do life together. And she said she'd be interested in that. So this random woman that hasn't been a part of our worship service or anything like that says this. And that's what she did. Over the last couple years, she joined a missional small group. She has joined us in worship. She's been drawn closer to God, and we as a congregation have been able to come around her through the small group, and also as staff and as a congregation to support her during some pretty difficult things that she's been going through the last couple years. And so what you should know about Anna is that she was raised Catholic in Poland. And just recently she was talking to me and she said, I'd like to become Lutheran. And I said, okay, that's not really why we're doing this, but we'll sure let you do that if you're interested. You know. And I said, why is that? And she said, because Lutherans actually read the Bible and apply it to everyday life. And FPU, Financial Peace University, was that doorway that she was able to step through that led her to a place where she could see the need and the value for God's word in her life. So we're starting with the need to move them to the real need, right? The felt need to the real need. So these are all good stories, I think. But the story that's most important to me is your story, your personal story, not what you're going to take back for what we're working on here, but your story. Do you have peace with your finances? If you don't, you're not alone. And I would challenge you that as leaders in a congregation, we cannot expect our congregation members, our teachers, our school families to have their finances under control if we do not. So I really want to challenge you to start there, and you can find a class near you on the website. The next step, of course, is what about your church members? I think we all might sense there's maybe a scarcity mentality in our congregation. And we also probably know that our members are missing out on the joy of tithing and sacrificial giving because their finances are all tied up in debt and they're living paycheck to paycheck. If you don't know that, I'm telling you, they're living paycheck to paycheck, okay? And so what a great way to minister to your people. And then, of course, that outside world. We also have a good sense, I believe, that the world outside of our church is driven by materialism or workaholism. And for some of us, even poverty is really part of the community that we're trying to reach out to, right? And those things are keeping the people distracted from knowing Christ as their Savior. So I challenge you to host that class and invite that outside world in to meet a God who will empower them to be a giver by giving of himself on the cross.